For the last 15 years, one comedian has created acts so profoundly ironic and self-aware that they've stood the test of time as not only hilarious pieces of comedy, but works of musical genius. That comedian is none other than Bo Burnham. I've been a fan of Burnham since Words, and have always seen his musical specials as forms of reprieve and comfort from the ailments of this world. But it seems now more than ever, Bo has taken a step away from comedic relief, and taken a step towards facing the world's problems head-on in his bold and uncharacteristically raw special, Inside. His newest special differs from others in several drastic ways. For starters, it takes place completely within the confines of his tiny, she-shed-like studio, as opposed to being performed in front of a live studio audience. For that reason, it's not presented to us in a chronological fashion, moving and flowing from one song to the next. It is a discordant, jumbled-up collection of clips and scenes that Bo recorded over a year-long stay in total isolation. It's as if one of Bo's comedy specials came into contact with the Blair Witch Project, being strung together sloppily and messily. This is not because Bo is a poor editor. This is completely by design. Visually and aurally, this is the first and most obvious example of Bo showcasing the chaos of life during the last year. The entirety of the special is self-aware in its messiness, and this theme carries itself all the way down to even the most minute detail of the entire show. It is not a new phenomenon to see a Bo Burnham special become completely meta and self-aware. My favorite example of this is the intro song of his special What, where we are greeted with Bo sitting in a chair being chastised by a disembodied voice for his tiny nipples and narcissistic tendencies. He then begins to bounce around the stage to a different disembodied voice, this time his own, which sings, "You used to do comedy when you felt like being funny, but now you're contractually obligated, so dance you fucking monkey." Pretty much since Bo's appearance on the world stage, he has been ironic, self-aware, and postmodern in his comedic acts. He has also had a knack for playing the role of self-aggrandizing egotist, constantly teetering between obvious, flippant arrogance and self-deprecation. These two traits run through the veins of Bo Burnham's work, but are never as prevalent as they are in Inside. The most glaring example of this dichotomy is found in the scene where Bo begins a jazzy show tune and immediately cuts to an FBE-styled reaction video in which Bo explains that being self-aware does not save someone from being a douchebag. The clip continues to layer upon itself, becoming so meta that Bo, uncomfortable as he is, shuts the entire thing down. Now more than ever, Bo is making us aware that he is aware that his self-awareness is useless if it goes unchecked, and his ego runs rampant. Bo has always rejected self-importance in all forms during his comedic career, and it certainly doesn't change now during quarantine. In terms of self-awareness, Burnham is taking the same meta nature of his acts, and he's placing it in the framework of life in 2020, a time when social distancing and economic shutdown led to mass isolation, fear, and depression. This resulted in many of us questioning our own realities, substituting virtual companionship in place of person-to-person contact. He explores this theme more and more, leading to a constant state of derealization. In 2016, at the tail end of the Make Happy era, Bo Burnham decided to step away from the spotlight, admitting it was due to crippling panic attacks he experienced on stage and in his personal life. By January of 2020, Bo was ready to hit the stage again, feeling confident in himself and overcoming his mental illness. Then, in a tragic twist of fate, as Bo himself ironically calls it, the funniest thing ever happened. The quarantine mandate hit the scene, and the world was plunged into isolation. It must have been frustrating for Burnham to go from a state of wellness and slip right back into the darkness, along with the rest of us. Aware of this, he plays with the idea of derealization all through the series as a relatable subject, one that we are all now far too familiar with in the year 2021. I find it interesting that he's able to meld his personal life with the world around him so seamlessly. His anxieties become our anxieties. The panic attacks he experienced, which he described in an interview with the always awesome Ethan Klein of H3 Podcast as,
do you become like very self-aware?
Tunnel vision, like tunnel vision, and then like, numb body, and then just a total like out-of-body feeling.
This physical sense of derealization that Bo experiences in his panic attacks has become on a social and objective level, the narrative of today's world. We are questioning the nature of things now more than ever, in a digital space which offers us everything all of the time. How can we be sure what we're looking at is the genuine truth? How do we know which information to believe when we are bombarded with different opinions, different takes on the event which took place? This, coupled with social isolation, forcing our social interactions to be placed in this digital space, has created an unseemly amount of confusion, hostility, resentment, and most importantly, an impeding sense of derealization. As we spiral more and more into the chaos of Bo Burnham's special, we begin to question even our own narrator, Bo himself. In his disjointed creation, he frequently blurs the lines between reality and entertainment, breaking kayfabe on a whim and just as effortlessly going right back into character. We see moments of genuine emotion, but we are all at once reminded that we are still looking at the world behind Bo's camera, seeing only what he wants us to see. Towards the end of the series, in several chilling displays of Bo's descent into madness, we are faced with Burnham having a literal mental breakdown while the camera is behind him, zooming in closer and closer to us, reminding us that it is watching us just as much as we are watching it. It's a paradoxical display showing us that what we're seeing could be a very real display of emotional outcry, or it could just as easily be an act. In the final scene, we see Bo finally step out of his house, only to realize the world outside is simply another stage, the spotlight focused directly on him as he frantically tries to go back inside, pounding on the door and eventually curling up into a ball, sobbing. It then cuts to Bo watching himself. He cracks a tiny smile and the scene immediately cuts to black. It is by far the most powerful scene in this special, showing us that there is a sixth sense of sadism, not only within himself, but within the audience who enjoys his content, despite the fact that he suffers to make it. Bo creates a world through a narrow lens. In this lens, we see a man who is suffering immensely to make something funny and entertaining all by himself. He is both determined to succeed, and yet he realizes that the mission is a very Don Quixote-like task. It is futile in the end, no matter how much it matters to him. In this special, we see, more than ever before, a rawness to Bo Burnham. We see a man struggling with mental illness, with isolation, with fear of the unknown, and yet, in the way he has presented it, we are left at the very end of the special wondering, was any of that real? Was he being genuine and real with us? Or was it all an act? I pondered this for a while before coming to a very simple conclusion. It doesn't actually matter. Whether he's being honest with us or simply performing the role of a character can't be known, and I imagine the answer is somewhere in between. But Bo is giving us something far more important than a glance into his life. He's giving us a look into our own lives too. Many, many people suffered this last year with mental illness. Anxiety and depression reached record highs at some points of the pandemic. Many people lost their jobs, lost their homes, and lost their friends. In this way, Bo is giving us a chance to reflect on the last year. He's not simply grieving for his own slip into madness, he is grieving with us as well. Once again, he's hiding behind fake narcissism and self-deprecation, only this time in an attempt to show us that he is not the only one struggling. In a special focused on isolation, he still shows, in an offhand way, an abundance of compassion and understanding, dismissing the fake shit that has been forced down our throats, while understanding the true, genuine heartache many of us felt this past year. In short, Bo Burnham has once again given us art that is brutally honest and self-aware, while being simultaneously charming, funny, and sardonic. Stepping up to the plate in an unprecedented time in recent history, he's given us the gift of self-reflection. In a time of utter confusion, Bo has made everything perfectly, painfully, and honestly clear. The question we should all be asking ourselves today is, now what? Hopefully that question can be answered a few years from now in another one of Bo Burnham's brilliant specials.